Of course, it comes on the back of that, the horrific scenes that we've come from the refugee camp. International criticism seems to be reaching fever pitch, but this is an operation that is still going ahead.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is just confirmation of what Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government have said the whole time, that they must go in here, that there's still groups of militants that need to be taken out. It's probably where the hostages are. They suspect it's where the military leadership of Hamas is, so they won't be stopping going into Rafah. And there's also tunnels which bring in weapons from Egypt as well, which they're trying to block up. So yes, that's going to continue. And of course, we saw that terrible airstrike on Sunday that killed 45 people, including women and children. And there's quite an interesting discussion going on about that, because the US has said that didn't cross its red line, which was very surprising given it was a missile strike in a heavily, in a tent city, basically. But there's also reports coming out of Israel, and it's real fog of war stuff of what really happened there. But they're saying that they used very, very small munitions in that strike, and that potentially it hit an arms depot or an ammunition dump, and so it was a secondary explosion that caused that. Now, what the truth is, we won't know until there's an investigation, but when you have 1.4 million people in a very small area and you're conducting fighting, this is unfortunately, these terrible scenes are going to happen. But I don't think that Israel will stop until this is concluded. The problem is that it's just as likely that the militants or the leadership will melt away and turn up somewhere else in Gaza. So it's real whack-a-mole stuff that Israel's conducting here, and that's why the world is so frustrated, because even if you take Rafah, it doesn't mean this is over or that Hamas is finished.
And yeah, I mean, Michael, how do you even know that Hamas is finished? What's it going to take for Israel to say, yes, this is fait accompli, we're done here?
Well, presumably, I mean, it would be if they get Sinwar, the military head, and he seems to be the real brains of the operation. Seems to be an incredibly, I mean, outside of being quite murderous, obviously, incredibly talented and has a great handle on how Israel, its society, its politics, its government works. And he's operated this particularly well. I mean, leaving aside, tens of thousands of people being killed, which is obviously tragic, but for Hamas that doesn't really matter. All that does is produce the global pressure which is exactly what Hamas wants on Israel. Now, even if they were to kill or capture Sinwar, this sort of trauma that the people of Gaza have been through is only going to radicalise another generation. So whether it's Hamas, whether it's Islamic Jihad, whether it's a new organisation that hasn't been formed yet, until you have a political solution, it won't end. But for Israel, for Netanyahu, I think if they captured Sinwar or if they killed him, they would declare that mission accomplished. He is obviously an extremely talented militant, in very bad ways, obviously, but he is the brains of the operation. So I think that would be what they'd call victory. But short of that, it would just be to clear the militants from that area. But as I say, they're more than likely to melt away and pop up elsewhere. So, that Israel can almost declare victory whenever they want after they've been through Rafah. But will it conclude? I don't think so.
And that complicates the post-war image of what Gaza or what this area is going to look like, right? There's been talk about sending blue helmets in, but even the UN says this is wildly complicated in terms of how they rebuild. Yeah,
I mean, it's going to take a huge amount of money, and it's going to require Arab nations being in there. I mean, any blue helmets or Israeli forces or whoever are going to be targeted by local people there, and reasonably enough, it's their territory. Outsiders have levelled it, and as I say, there'll be a lot of radicalisation that goes on there. So it really is going to need Saudi money and Gulf states in there providing troops to help rebuild. But until Israel gets on board with the prospect of a Palestinian state, that's unlikely to happen. And Israel getting on board for a Palestinian state is very unlikely to happen too, which is the conundrum that we find ourselves in today, unfortunately.